Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this webinar series. I would like to invite our moderator for this session, who is the Manager Service Delivery at NITA Uganda, Ms. Madeline Gisa. Over to you, Madeline.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you very much, Geraldine. Thank you, team, and thank you, our panelists, for joining us today. Today we're discussing something that is very important to all of us. How are we growing? How are we changing? And how are we shifting from legacy to leading edge? So I would like to give a small background to our listeners about on what we're doing this week as NITA. We're holding an e-government excellence month, and the highlight of this week will be the award ceremony tomorrow. But the build-up of it is that we're under the theme of bold digital government embracing disruptive technologies. So the main aim of this is advertising, showing advancements in e-government services in Uganda, and the award activities has loads of stuff that will culminate into the award ceremony on Friday tomorrow, and part of that is the master classes that we're doing. We've been doing this all week, and I think today we are going to discuss shifting from the legacy to the leading edge. And I would like to thank you all participants that have come in today, and I'd like to join me in welcoming our panelists today. On the panel, we have Joel Mohumusa from FlyHub. We have Ernest Mwewaza from Sunbird AI, and we have Jackie Chitiwa from Financial Sector Deepening Uganda. My name is Madeline Mugisa. I manage service delivery at NITA Uganda, and as part of service delivery, we see a lot of shift from legacy ways of assisting our customers and serving customers, and having moved to improved, smarter, intelligent ways of serving our customers using AI, using IoT, using machine learning and all of that. And luckily, that is our topic for today, and I'm glad that the panelists have joined us today. So to start us off, I would like the panel to introduce themselves, and then I would like us to start with. So starting with you, Joel and Jackie, and Ernest in that order. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Madeline. I think it's start with the new kid on the block day. Yeah, so like Madeline said, my name is Joel Mohumusa. I'm the CEO of FlyHub. FlyHub is a new fintech under the Stanbic umbrella, that is Stanbic Holdings, which has a number of subsidiaries, one of which is the bank. So we have the bank, then we have the real estate properties, which handles real estate work. We've got Stanbic Securities, which I'm sure many of you were hearing about when we're doing the IPO. And then we've got the incubator, which supports small businesses, and now FlyHub, which is going to be creating transformational digital technologies. My mandate is unique under Standard Bank Group altogether, because I'm part of the group, but I'm separate as well, because I'm going to be a disruptive agent to how they do business, and really trying to push what they're calling the platform approach to delivering services. So I'm happy to be here, and looking forward to talking about some of the work that I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very well put, Joel. We're happy to meet you and look forward. Yes, Jackie?
Thanks, Madeleine, and you're all welcome. Thank you very much for having me on this panel. I'm truly honored to be here. My name is Jackie Chitiwa. I am the Head of Business Environment and the Digital Economy Lead at Financial Sector Development Uganda. And what we do, Financial Sector Development is an independent not-for-profit organization. We are a think and do tank that supports financial inclusion in Uganda, as well as financial market development. And we provide policy as well as private sector recommendations through well-evidenced research that is relevant to local context. We also provide technical assistance to government agencies, financial sector regulators, industry associations to just support them in their policy making and supervision. And we also provide catalytic grants that enable us to test innovative solutions in the financial sector in order to grow real and social sectors, especially targeting the underserved or the unserved populations of Uganda, including women, youth, refugees, smallholder farmers, and small businesses.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jackie. That is very, very good stuff that you're doing over there. On to you, Ernest.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the invite, Nitayu. So I'm called Ernest Mwebazi. I'm a strategy lead at Sunbird AI. So Sunbird AI does practical AI for social good solutions. So my background, I have a long background in academia, done maybe 10 years. And then I joined Google AI, which is in Ghana. And part of my background was starting the Makere AI Lab, which is a lab focused on data science and artificial intelligence and targets social good applications in this context, Africa and Uganda particularly. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ernest. So to further continue our discussion, I'll be allowing questions in as we go from the team, and I'll encourage everyone that's listening in and watching us to kindly write your questions in the chat group, and I'll be able to share them with the moderators as we go. Now to start, my mind is drawn to Grace Hopper. Grace was one of the leading computer scientists of her time, and she was known for saying that most of the dangerous and expensive phrases in business is, we have always done it this way. Fast forward today, we all know that digital transformation is here to stay, and we're living in the fourth industrial revolution. It's here, the fourth industrial revolution is here, as we like to call it. Things have changed from the way we've done business, and we are out of the legacy ways of doing work, and it was always done like this is no longer what the millennials want to say. We're looking at innovation, we're looking at smarter ways, we're looking at how to improve, we're looking at what's the best and fastest and quickest way, and how can we improve turnaround time. And all of that, of course, comes with a lot of transformation, and most of it digital, and far from our legacy ways of doing work with paperwork and how it used to be. So with that background, I'd like to call the first panelist. I will be asking Joel to give us more insight on the finance sector. So in the finance sector that has been here for a very, very long time before tech, they say when things are stable, we don't touch them. Or if something is not broken, then there's no need to fix it. How easy is it for the financial institutions, Joel, to take up new innovative ways of offering their services to customers? And what's your experience as far as FlyHub is concerned? How have you managed at FlyHub? And are the banks generally keeping up or chasing pace? So Joel, we would like to hear from you regarding that, and how your experience at FlyHub is, and how the banks are keeping up, and how innovation is a part of your area. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Madeline. I was thinking about the fact that there's, I think it's Nassim Taleb who was talking about, if you compare two industries, if you compare the financial services industry and restaurants, you'll see new restaurants coming up almost all the time, but you won't see new banks popping up in and out all over the place. And I think there's this, there's a huge inertia that financial institutions have, because the core of their business is about facilitating the transfer of money across time and space. And for the most part, adoption of technology, if we look at the century we're in, I think about my father, for instance, who's in his 70s. He started at a time when the bank would close at 3 p.m. and that was it. That was just the rule. If you didn't get your money out by Friday, 3 p.m., that meant for that weekend, I was going to be a very annoyed young man because I wanted some cash from him and he couldn't get it. And when ATMs came about, the thinking at the time, because he had people who were working in the bank in his family, the thought was that people are going to lose their jobs because the ATM is here, everything is going to be automated. There's no need for bank branches. More bank branches were opened because there was more need for people to have face-to-face interactions. So I think when I think about his life and his span of 70 years, he's seen more change in the last 10 years than he did in his first 60 years. So it's incredible the amount of stuff that's going on. I mean, even the technologies we take on, by the time we're done reviewing them, there's a newer, faster, better, sexier way of doing it, and you almost can't keep up. And this is what we're trying to sell to people who started their careers in the 1980s and they're running and heading up these institutions. So to tell someone who knows what has been working for the last 40 years that, hey, it's not working out okay, but their balance sheet is fine, is a big challenge. And I think it's more so in the financial services industry because one, it's well regulated. Two, it's about stability. Most other things might change, but in financial services, they don't play with their money. So don't give me any stories about the system broke down. And that's been a huge challenge on my side because really the issue is not technology. I mean, the same person who might be opposed to the incorporation of blockchain might own some cryptocurrency on their smartphone. Individually, they might be embracing it, but for the systems that they're overseeing, it's quite difficult. I think, though, that the presence of fintech has been a good shot in the arm for a lot of our traditional financial service providers. And it was showing us that it's not easy for us to know what's not broken. You don't know what could be done differently until you see it done differently. So when mobile money came into the picture, for instance, I would like to say mobile money was the first mode in which, at least in Uganda, there was inclusive digital financial services because there was a remittance need. There was need to move money, especially from the cities into the rural areas. And so that created a demand for that remittance service. But on top of that, now you can pay for utilities, you can pay for your taxes. The use cases have started to expand. And it took about 10 years for regulation to come and catch up and understand how they were going to regulate mobile money. So the point that I'm trying to drive at, I think, is that the financial services sector is still turning because it's quite large. Its concerns are around security. They are predisposed to avoiding risk, and any innovation and change comes with risks that even the innovators don't know about. I mean, all of us are here in this chat. Every time I'm bringing up some new way of doing something, including robotic process automation for how some business as usual is done and the way reports are being done. The technology part is simple. It's figuring out how that process is going to be done safely. So I'm going to be asked questions that I don't know the answers to. I would say, well, let's try a pilot. Say, well, a pilot? I mean, what if things go bad? And what if it's, they're going to be put on Twitter and we're going to be shown as unserious? So those are the challenges that we're seeing. And even in my time, I used to work where Jackie works, at financial sector development. And a lot of the grants and a lot of the work that we're trying to do was, we thought money at the first instance was, it's a problem of capital. It's a problem of exposure to technology. But no, I think it's the fact that disruption is not just introducing a tool, it's changing incentives. It changes how people are going to be operating. One of the dreams that Stanbic, for instance, has is they've got, I think, over 1,700 staff, and most of them are working in the back end. Most of them are behind the scenes trying to make stuff happen. But a lot of them are also doing, the same thing day in, day out, almost like a factory worker. There's no need for that. You have a lot of human potential that is sitting dormant doing the same type of stuff, when we could unleash that potential to say, hey, how can we deal with customers better? How is it that we can take the bank to where people are? And to me, I think that's where the thinking has started to change. And it's, I think, coincidentally changing because fintechs are starting to take over. We saw Chipper Cash, for instance, come into the market, and they're giving people the chance to buy securities in the United States. Now, that's something that no one would be stopping traditional financial service providers from doing, but it's quite risky. And, if there's no risk, like you said, it's not broken, why try and do something? So I think the fact that we've had an openly competitive market is a good thing. It's a shot in the arm. It's making my life much easier. And I think what I'm seeing now is the move from, I think the first move was banks originated within marketplaces. They originated where people are doing transactions, but then they became institutions. And becoming institutions, they almost became separate. So now you have to go to where the bank is to get the banking service. So it was a place that you had to go to. In this pandemic, the banks that didn't have good digital channels, I think, really had it badly because people couldn't access, their services. And so right now, you'd be in real trouble if you don't have a digital channel, you don't have a digital strategy. Well, that's well and good, but you can have the channel and the strategy, but if your processes, if the way you operate, if the way you interact is not digitized, there'll be a slowdown. You'll only move as fast as the slowest individual or as the slowest process within your entity. So that pressure is now starting to form the demand for change internally. And the other piece is that, while we have digital places, we have an app, for instance. Everyone wants to have an app. I don't know about you, but when I look at my phone, I keep swiping. Like, I can't have an app for everything. There are too many apps. So my thought and what we're trying to drive towards is saying, rather than say, even on your phone, that you have to come to where the bank is, why can't we embed the bank in the platforms where people are? Why can't you request for a loan when you're on SafeBoard or when you're in Jumia? Why can't you open an account, through all these other places that already have activity? So sort of circling back to where financial institutions started and embedding that service where people are. And you just ensure that they're enjoying something from that standpoint. The benefits we're seeing, I mean, some of the work that we've done, we're only a year old, but now with our subsidiaries, next year we should be launching our real estate platform. So it's a method for people to be able to view properties, to be able to calculate their mortgages, and then request for a loan all digitally. A lot of it is going to help people who might, they're sending money to their relatives to say, are you building that thing? Then they come in December and find that, the money has been eaten. There could be a way for you to track and see that things are actually, coming together. You can see picture evidence, you can see the progress towards what you've been building. The EIPO, for instance, this was the first electronic IPO in Uganda's history, in the ability for people to buy shares. So it's early days, it's simple stuff, but I think we're taking it slow because it's about changing a mindset. It's not enough to think that we're a young country and therefore, because millennials understand it, everyone's going to move. A lot of the financial and the decision power is held by people who are across multiple age groups. And if we are to make them feel excluded or we're just, frustrated and want them to leave, well, it's going to be resistance. So for me, it's about saying there's a way in which we can all benefit from this. Lastly, when I think about the risks that we have with fourth IR, I think there's a lot of excitement, but part of my job is also thinking about, well, how is this going to change how we engage with people? How is it going to change how our culture operates? A lot of the technology we're taking on board is not nestled, is not something that has been birthed here. And I use the example, for instance, of China. Part of the plan that China had was to not be a highly automobile-led economy. But, they eventually started buying a lot of cars. And that meant the way they built their cities is in such a way that it accommodates cars. So by that, I just mean when we take on certain technologies, it will change the way we interact. It will change the traditional ways in which we move. Now, I think we can't be blind to that. We also have to be participatory. And this is where, if we're more inclusive, and this is why I'm happy with the NITA e-government approach, is that if we're understanding that, even government is thinking about this, we're thinking about this, then together we can create something new. Even if we're using tools that might not be indigenous to us, we can make them indigenous to us, because it's important for us to know that tools are not neutral. They change us. They change the way we interact with ourselves and the way we offer services. So in a roundabout way, I would say we are moving at a good enough speed. We need to get much quicker. But the pandemic, as bad as it's been, I think gave us a good shot in the arm. And the fact that there are more fintechs in this market, it's a good thing for me, at least, because I now get to see more business. I see the need for financial services to get more digital. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Joel. That is a very, very well put. Key to your comments is the fact that change management is very vital in all of this. And something you said that pertains all of us is the mindset. And I think for all of us in this digital transformation era, if our mindsets are not open, we can't go forward. It's new things, new ways, and your dad, as you said, I wonder how that's going for him. I really wonder how that's going for him. But very, very good insights. Just to remind everyone that's here with us that you can kindly share your questions. And if you have anything to ask Joel, now that he's made his submission, we'll be more than happy to share it with him. The next panelist I'll be inviting will be Ernest. And for us, it's going to be ladies last. Sorry, Jackie. Joel, the financial sector has also been around, as Joel has alluded to, but your sector is new on the horizon, and industries and societies embracing new innovations driven by the 4 IRs is hallmarks. It's new. It's something that's just creeping up on us. AI, IoT, data science, data modeling, machine learning, all these amazing things are not as legacy as Joel's area. So Ernest, for you, I would like to ask, are we in the region of AI yet in Uganda? Or are we still loving our legacy styles of technology? And how are we winning mindsets? How are you winning mindsets? How are we going to change the way Joel's customers have been thinking to the way your area is working, and how we should be able to adjust into the 4th industrial revolution?
Great, thanks, Madeline. Yeah, loaded questions. All right, so I'll try and break them apart a bit. So are we in the region there yet? Are we still having a legacy style technology? And sort of what's the horizon sort of outlook of YR? I suppose one thing is sort of this relativity with time. So in hindsight, you can sort of look at the other industrial revolutions, from 1 up to the 3rd. Well, we are still in the 3rd a bit, but you can look at them in hindsight and see what sort of benefits accrued from that and the opportunities that were there. With the 4th industrial revolution, we seem to be right either at the brink of it or in it already. And so it's exciting, but the biggest, one of the biggest thing about this is that there's a lot of uncertainty of where we are and sort of the effects of all this technology. So for sure, like all industrial revolutions, these cause disruptions in production. They are always about production. And so we're seeing, the estimate is that we are definitely, there's going to be improved human, the livelihoods of humans is going to increase, organizations are going to improve the way they do things, governments are going to improve the way they do things. And in all this, of course, the question of, are we there yet? Or are we still having the old style is still pertinent. So maybe one impression I get of Uganda, maybe Africa in general, is that we still have our feet sort of planted in all the industrial revolutions. If you think about the first industrialization, about wood and steam, or the second about energy, electricity. For example, Uganda is electrified, I think, up to about, maybe 25%. And so you can see we're still catching up with that. Third revolution was about digitization. And this is still as as many of you know, still a challenge in Uganda. And of course, now we're entering the fourth, AI, blockchain, IoT, etc. And so are we there yet? So I guess the answer maybe has two parts. One, I think for a lot of the consumers, we may be there. So as Joel said, he has many apps, he's doing many things online. So for many consumers, they're consuming a lot of these services. You can order things online, you can hail a taxi online, you can book whatever, you can check your health. Many people monitor their health. You can actually quantify your health organs. You can know how much you're practicing, how much you're eating, what the effect is. So there are many ways we engage with this thing as consumers. So I think that seems to be getting there. The supply side is a bit different. So our government's producing the right technology, our industry is producing technology at cheap, at affordable prices, things like bandwidth or the cost of data, infrastructure. So these are things that seem to be lacking, sort of the underlying backbone on which 4IR can be leveraged. So in some sense, because the world is so digitalized and combined, you can have individuals leveraging some of these things, but you can have things like government, industry, private sector, still slow on the supply side. They have not yet caught up enough to provide some of these services. So that is sort of what I think about where we are. And of course, the challenges, I think Joel talked about them again, is that unfortunately this brings inequality. So disruption, especially this one, I think this is unprecedented. I think the rate of change in the fourth industrial revolution is unprecedented, even from the other revolutions. We are seeing exponential changes. And so this disruption causes inequalities, unfortunately. And that's something we sort of need to be aware of. So the last question was about winning mindsets. So this sort of is a complex statement. So I mean, there's that famous saying that people will only change if they have to, or if they want to. So two ways people can change. So two ways people can change their mindsets. So if they have to, is one way of doing it. So, and we've seen even just a recent example of the COVID pandemic has forced schools to change to online offerings of their services. So I have a colleague who worked in the education space, and he has tried to revolutionize it with putting things online. Before the pandemic, this was very, very hard. I mean, his solution was rejected several times, but after the pandemic or during the pandemic, schools have been forced to change their mindsets. So that is one way change can happen. And we see it in several places. Other times people change their mindsets when they want to. And one clear example is mobile money. I did a lot of work previously in trying to, in ICT for health, back when ICT was still a really huge thing. And we're trying to give small PDAs, small personal digital assistance to health workers to help them read and improve their knowledge of their sector. And this was very hard. They couldn't charge them, there are issues with losing them, and etc. And things have changed. This has not happened with mobile money because people want to harness the opportunities. So you never get people saying we are too far, we cannot charge our phones, we have access to phones. I mean, people will move, climb a tree, or look for solar or anything. And so the mindset changes because the technology itself, or the opportunity of the technology is clear and it's huge. So people automatically, will change. So I think these are sort of two levels for people to change, how to change mindsets, how to win them. And how this works, I suppose, with government, at the government level, it's I would say maybe through policy and regulation tools. I think that's it. That's the tools government has that they can use to drive change. And we're seeing examples of this, even just for, for the third IR digitization. URA says, okay, now to apply for a TIN, you have to do it online. Vehicle registration is online. Passport application is online. You have to, and just by doing that, people, change and they, oh, this is actually easier. I don't have to interface with all the middlemen who want a cut from this. And this sort of push causes change in the mindsets. So there are tools at government level that can be used. I think from the private sector and organization and industries, I think this idea of offering clear benefits of these tools is sort of a good thing. So contextualizing solutions, making sure they appeal to people. I think this is also key to changing the mindsets. And maybe just finally to say, I think adaptation is going to be a key skill, I think, going forward. I think for everyone, for governments, for individuals, individual companies, etc. And so this idea of adaptation is going to be key because the technology changes quite fast. And to harness the opportunities, we're going to have to adapt very quickly and innovate. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ernest. It's amazing how for all of us, changes and mindset is creeping up on each one of the sectors that we're all in. And I think for us in our generation now, it's going to be amazing to look back 10 years from now on how far we're going to have come and how much change would have affected us. So I'm looking forward with everyone with the AI part, the fintech side. If on those are just few of the sectors and how they're going to interact with government that gives an array of services, whether in health, whether in security, and how all these beautiful things we're doing in our areas are going to affect each of those parts of government. It's going to be amazing, I'm sure. So thank you very much, Ernest. Next, I'm going to ask Jackie to come in. So Jackie, we know that a large part of the population is still very unbanked. And we also know that fintechs are working to bridge the gap, and they're working very quick and very fast to ensure that financial services are using technology and bringing, of course, the communities together and getting the financial services closer to the communities. My first question would be, what has been the impact of your organization in making this journey easier for our communities and enabling them tap into the use of digital financial services? I would like to hear from you on exactly how your organization is helping the area of communities in Uganda and what the impact has been and what the journey has been like for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madeleine. Maybe just to provide background and context. Like I said, I mentioned earlier that financial sector deepening is focused on increasing financial inclusion and supporting financial market development. And our target group are the unserved or underserved people. And the hypothesis a few years ago, what we thought was that if we have as many people banked as possible, we will see growth and development in the country. But our data has shown over the years that even with reducing financial exclusion, for example, financial exclusion in 2006 was almost 43%. And in 2018, we noticed that this has reduced to almost 22%. But there wasn't a corresponding reduction in poverty. And the question was why? So we realized that for me to open up and use an account, I need to have income. For me to access credit, I need to have collateral, whether it's cash or assets. I need to have something that I give my financial service provider as collateral for them to give me a loan. For me to access, to buy an insurance policy or have a pension plan, I need to have income. So our focus has slightly shifted from how many bank accounts are out there and how many new customers do we have in banks to how do we increase take-home incomes? How do we build household and business resilience? How do we allow people to accumulate assets and wealth? so ultimately, how do we increase productivity? How do we increase employment? So alongside this, we know that government has been, in all its development plans, is trying so hard to achieve SDGs. So at the same time, we're also thinking is how do we improve individual standards of living, and how do we make all of this sustainable? Like, how do we create climate smart solutions, and how do we reduce carbon emissions? So what we have been doing is our focus around how do we increase take-home incomes. We have focused on sectors that we see have high employment multipliers, like agriculture, like trade, like light manufacturing. And what we are looking at is how do financial services support these sectors? We're also saying, how do we improve lives? How do we increase access to basic services like health, education, affordable housing? And lastly, on sustainability piece, we are saying, how do we green finance, and how do we finance for greening? So overall, the way we are looking, our strategy now is how do financial services support these verticals? And in these particular cases, how do we work with fintechs, or how do we work with technology to see that we achieve these goals? So we are seeing, for example, under agriculture and trade, we have worked with incumbent financial service providers, and I'm talking commercial banks, as well as new entrants, fintechs, to see how we can support value chain-based financing, digital payments, credit, bundled insurance, productive asset financing. We are also working around movable collateral-based credit. We know that one of the biggest barriers to access to credit, at least in Uganda, is the lack of collateral. Most people, most households, most businesses do not have assets that are widely accepted as collateral. So we want to see innovative ways. How can we work with fintechs, for example, to create? We were discussing a very interesting solution, and still looking into it, to say, how do we work with fintechs to, for example, come up with a system that can allow collateralization of livestock for farmers to borrow against their livestock, So we look at the health sector, we are saying, how can we introduce microinsurance products to reduce out-of-pocket healthcare expenditure? Under education, how do we digitize school fees payments? How do we support education loans? How do we provide under housing mortgage financing that allows flexibility in the way businesses or households pay back these loans that fit their particular incomes? So around this, we have seen financial service providers offer digital microlending to small businesses that are within large value chain of suppliers. And we see a lot of employment opportunities coming up through this value-based financing. We also see fintechs digitizing the agricultural value chain using cloud-based technologies. And we have seen agricultural cooperatives efficiently manage their record keeping, their day-to-day operations, and using this same information to actually offer credit to thousands of farmers. We, under our refugee portfolio, we have seen banks deploy bank agents, over 200 in one of our refugee settlements. We've seen a bank deploy over 200 agents, and also to offer cash in, cash out settlements services for refugees, as well as create merchant services and create jobs. Our target mainly is women and youth, like I told you, and we have seen such ecosystem solutions create a lot of jobs for women and youth. Then obviously we are also supporting government on their social security program in terms of developing frameworks that allow disbursement of social security payments to people in rural areas. We've also seen the government, support vulnerable groups during the pandemic. And we see that digital technologies actually play a very big role in such ecosystems, whether it is by the way potential beneficiaries were informed about this program actually being in place, the way they were identified, the way they were onboarded, the reconciliations that are done after such payments are made, screening for eligibility, all this, we just see, and so many use cases that have been, that are supporting all these processes. Over and above that, so we look at it as we are supporting businesses and households, but we also support the institutions that support these businesses. And here we are talking about the tier 4 sector, the smaller, the SACCOs, the VSLAs. Most of these don't have the proper governance structures in place to actually do their businesses efficiently. So most of them are loss making. Most of them don't have surveillance or monitoring systems. Most of them don't have data protection and privacy structures in place. And yet they are the ones that actually are supporting the groups, the underserved and the unserved segments of the population. So we're also working with fintechs to digitize most of the processes of these institutions, but also building their technical capacity, as well as supporting regulators to put in place policies that support them. Now, for all this, there are so many things that are taking place, but we've realized that for all this to happen well, and for us to have these services actually benefiting those that we are targeting, we need to have robust digital ID systems. And we have been working with NITA-U as well as Uganda Bankers Association to put in place an eKYC service that we see will improve verification and authentication of digital ID, and make the process of onboarding new customers efficient. We also see that there's a very big gap, and I think my previous panelists have talked about this in terms of digital skills and financial literacy. It doesn't help for us to have all these new solutions that are on the market, but the customers are not empowered. They can't use the devices. They can't understand the technology, but more so they are not protected. They are unaware of the risks that they actually have in interacting around this. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done around that. But then also now the infrastructure. Right now we are working again with Uganda Bankers Association, BOU, the different MNOs and other regulators to see how do we deploy interoperable, affordable, low-cost retail payments. And the solution that is being discussed right now is to have a national switch where all retail providers in the economy can, tap into that and provide services at affordable costs. I will stop at that for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jackie. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. And I think Jackie will be leaving us shortly as she has another commitment at 3 p.m. So I think, Jackie, this one is going to go to you. Stephen Opola from Koli District says, thank you for your contributions in the ICT transformation. And he's looking out for the local governments. And he says, how do we plan to scale AI in the implementation of agriculture, especially for local governments? So from a financial sector side, and how are you planning to use AI and all these lovely things that we're doing to improve agriculture specifically?
I'll ask Ernest to answer that question. I'm sure he's better placed to answer that question.
Cool. Yeah, thanks a lot. Right. Precision agriculture in Kole. So I think one of the things we need to take into account is context. And I think you did mention this, Jackie, the idea of context. So what are the opportunities for 4IR in Kole County, the Kole District? And is precision agriculture the thing that will cause the most impact there? So this is a question I think that needs to be asked. So we need to contextualize these solutions. And maybe another question one could ask is, you have in Kole District, you have, I don't know, maybe 8,000 farmers or 8,000 people. What are the opportunities for 8,000 farmers with smartphones in Kole District? What are the opportunities? How can we leverage for IR with what is already there? So on the question of how we do precision agriculture there, precision agriculture requires very expensive equipment, and normally the return on investment only makes sense if the farms are really large, if you're doing it on a huge scale. So if you have smallholder farmers with parcels of land of 1 to 2 acres, more or less, and they're intercropping, precision agriculture becomes complicated in the sense of traditional precision agriculture mechanisms. But if you think of how can we use a smartphone to understand the health of crops in a field, or to understand yield from a field, or how can we improve agricultural outcomes of the farmers in Kole with what we currently have, then you can think of adding the technology, mobile phones, you can use artificial intelligence, and you can build an app maybe that classifies diseases in crops, or can predict how, the fertility of soil. And this you can add maybe a sensor. Now this is IoT technology that sort of gives a reading about the fertility of the soil or the weather, etc. So I think the question could probably be broader and say how can we optimize the opportunities in Kole County with the farmers there to improve agriculture. I think that would be a more realistic case. And then of course you'd have to go down and see the context. So it's not really answering the question, but sort of widening it out. Thanks.
Maybe just to add, thank you so much, Ernest. Just to add on some of the work we are doing, we've actually developed a fourth industrial revolution strategy for the government of Uganda in collaboration with the Ministry of ICT. And we were also invited to discussions that are taking place right now under Ministry of Agriculture, where they're trying to say, how do they use blockchain technology to increase the efficiency of agriculture along the value chain. And some of these things, like Ernest was saying, are context-based. It's still very early days to see real, useful, impactful use cases or solutions that are coming out of this. But there are feasibility studies that are taking place right now, where we hope that we can, glean and get some insights. There are pilots that are taking place, especially in more mature value chains, like the dairy. I think the dairy value chain right now is one of the most mature agricultural value chains. So we hope to see many more innovations and many more solutions coming up around that going forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie. And before you leave, there's a question for John, and he's asking, is your organization using or applying any 4IRs, and if so, which ones? And I think you've been very clear with what you're doing in that area. Maybe just be a bit more specific to him. Maybe you'd like to hear in AI, we're doing this, in IoT, we're doing this. If you could, thank you very much.
That's for Jackie, right?
Yes, that's for Jackie. The question was directed to Jackie.
I thought it was for Joel.
Oh no, it was directed to you.
You need to stop thinking about me, Jackie.
Yeah.
We're talking to you.
With we are using our organization per se is not a technology solution, and that's why I really thought that Joel would help. But we are working with fintechs to digitize and create digital trails for businesses out there, as well as households. So personally, I wouldn't say we are using AI or any of these IoT solutions internally for FSTU, but we are developing and testing solutions. Like I was telling you about the micro lending solutions or micro insurance solutions. These are using algorithms and detecting consumer behavior and business behaviors. For example, we have linked retailers or fast-moving goods to commercial banks, and they are using the business records or the business sales and invoicing information to develop a credit profile for consumers that were not previously had no previous credit record. They are not registered in any credit reference bureau and stuff like that. So they're using that to create data. We also see, for example, for off-grid energy solutions, where people in the rural areas are buying these small solar panels that cost, I don't know, $200 a year and paying maybe $10 a month over a period of time. And this alone creates a credit record. And we are seeing people using these same devices once they paid it off, they now use it as collateral to get other services like, children's loans and stuff like that. So in that way, yes, we are seeing a lot of potential for these technologies, but not within FSTU operations. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. John, I hope that answers your question. I think Jackie would work very well with the data that Joel is collecting and then pass it on to Ernest, and then would have a very beautiful cycle. So the next question is for you, Joel. John still asks that Stanbic is hosting the app in SA, in South Africa, sorry. So his question is, what plans does FlyHub have to improve the bank's digital experience? I think he's asking more futuristically because yes, he sees the app and I think he's looking at the future. What is on the horizon and what can he look forward to seeing?
Okay. Thanks, John. To Jackie, I think before you leave, it's important that we also get digitized. So I'll come and present my services to you, I'll be preaching to the choir. Yeah, so maybe to clarify some of the things, I think, John, that's a very good question. From our standpoint, FlyHub is in a unique position because we're sort of separate. So in essence, we don't manage the bank's assets. We are, sort of going to be a vendor of some sort to them. And the reason we are autonomous is so that we can do work for even ABSA. We can do work for Standard Chartered. That's why we don't have Stanbic in our name as well. It's meant for us to be an industry operator. What's going on in the bank is sort of the digitization of the bank. Then there's Beyond Bank. I'm responsible for Beyond Bank. But to sort of circle back to your point, what I'm looking at in the future is that we would look at possibly having an omni-channel, the app that would rule them all. From one place, you should be able to trade your securities, pay your water bills, exchange to mobile money. I don't know, send money to your sweetheart, to preparate, pay for bills, or put it all in one place. The fact that you would have FlexiPay than the Standard Bank app is not ideal. You don't need to have two things from one organization. Further to that, the big thing that FlyHub is looking at, what we're going to be staking our claim on in this region, not just in Uganda, is one, we're building an API marketplace. Basically, we want to take all the financial services and make them modular, so that when you come to FlyHub and say you need for your business to be able to do sanction screening, you want to be able to do remittances, you want to be able to, onboard customers, you want KYC, you don't have to connect with so many different providers to get that done. Through us, you can just pick and select the menu of services that you need. We're taking the API mode also because we want to be able to publish so that developers within the country or across the world can build atop of those services. So you can start building on top of the infrastructure that's already there. Our goal is to sort of extend the service into different ecosystems so that when you come through us, you can get what the bank has and incorporate it into your app, incorporate it into your e-commerce site, incorporate it into your business, rather than saying you have to go directly to the bank. So that's one big thing that we're trying to do. Second, the digital experience with the bank is we are going to be co-working with the bank to actually digitize it. So it's sort of digital, but it's really not. There's still a lot of manpower, a lot of processes that are going on behind the scenes. So the application, for instance, of robotic process automation, that's a big thing that we're going to be relying on. That's just a fancy term for making sure that the systems that are operating in the bank are able to communicate. You have it automated. Data is being generated. There's so much data that's being generated by the interactions we have with staff, with customers and staff. And we're only, I think, making use of a fraction of it. We spend so much time getting the data, but now we're looking at it and saying, what are we supposed to do with it? So the ability to, get some data-driven insights, apply data science models, that's what we're going to be trying to do so that when there's an account, this is the joke I keep making. People at the bank don't laugh so much when I make it, but they say things like they have a women's product and then they call it just like a diva account. I go, but it's all you've done is give it a name. It's still a savings account. It's not really speaking to, what are the core needs that you're trying to serve for women? Are women enough to be put under one umbrella and say this account will meet all women's needs? I'm not quite sure. So getting to the point where you can customize the services, because now we're seeing what you're actually doing. So moving beyond the data that we totally ask for in terms of collateral and whatnot, but maybe even incorporating your social media information, incorporating what you do on Safe Border, incorporating what you do on Jumia, so that we have a full picture of what you do and then tailor our products to what you want to have. Those are ambitious goals, and we're going to try and help the bank get in a position where it can take advantage of those kinds of insights. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Joel. I think that is very key, and I think that what is key within what you're doing is data protection, InfoSec. I think those are areas that are growing with us and have to be part and parcel of what we are doing. Jackie is saying bye. Thank you so much, Jackie, for having us. Maybe you could give us a closing remark before you run off, and then we'll have 1-2 questions and close off the panel.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a great discussion. Thank you, Ernest and Joel, for sharing your insights. I'm very intrigued by Joel's vision of data portability, having all your data so that there's like a full profile of everything that you do. And it's something that we have actually been discussing internally and would want to have these discussions. So please, let's keep the conversations going. And I wish you all the well, Nita. This has been a great experience and a great week, and looking forward to furthering the discussions around this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much. As we continue, maybe there are no more questions, but I would like to ask Ernest maybe to give us what do you feel as a government we should focus on in terms of your area? And then for you, Joel, I have one more question, and I very much have a question to share close off. So Ernest, what do you feel the government of Uganda should focus on in your area? Where should we live? What sectors? How should we improve these sectors? What is key for us at the moment, and how can we leverage it as government and as NITA to further improve service delivery?
Right. The question of what to focus on is quite hard, what to prioritize. So I suppose one theoretical answer could be, so we've been seeing the factors of production. I think initially it was land, labor, and capital. And these were the key things that were thought to lead to production, that you needed to have production. And eventually they added on entrepreneurship, and they've added on several things going forward. But with 4IR, I think it's increasingly becomingly important that human the human talent is developed, that the human talent is going to be a key factor of production, even probably more than something like capital, because of the nature of the technologies and the interconnectedness. It's likely that you're going to have very highly skilled people who lead the technology revolution. And so what can maybe the government do on it? I think, and I think this is also in the NDP3, this idea of capacity building. I think we need to build capacity of the people. And capacity building is multi-tiered. So you have capacity building at universities. How can you change the curriculum to make sure that the students getting out of universities are well versed with the topics, they're knowledgeable and they're skilled. Then there's the people who are already in industry. So retooling them, that aspect of retooling and reskilling people already in the field to sort of make use of these opportunities for IR is also important. And then, of course, you have higher levels of capacity building managers. The need to create awareness, like this event that MetaU has organized. I think something like this is really, really critical to bring people on board. Because if we don't harness, if the human capacity is not built to harness this technology. So there are many things we can do with the human capacity. One is to create these 4 IR technologies. That's sort of the ideal, the highest level. But the medium level is to use them, to able use them in our context, so to customize them. So like your leapfrogging necessitates that the human capital can look at our context and utilize the current technologies to solve our current problems. And so I think building the human capacity is going to be critical. So if there's one thing I think you should focus on, or the government should focus on, would be that. Thanks.
Thank you very, very much. And maybe just your priority areas in this section, in the different in the sector.
As a Sandbad AI?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay, our priority areas have been mainly, so broadly, it's sort of AI for social good. And AI, of course, is multi-tiered, but mostly we're looking at data sets. What are the data sets that could be used for social good, right? To harness some of the opportunities for IR. From data sets, you create machine learning models or AI algorithms, and then you can do inference. You can make better decisions. And so we are focusing on data. One, in its raw forms, the collection of data, for example, language data, we're thinking of collecting satellite data, best data that people can use to create solutions. Then we're looking also at refined data. So can we use data to create policies, so evidence-based policy making that relies on data and information. And so this requires building examples, for example, from using artificial intelligence. Some of the work we've done, for example, is taking social media data and understanding perceptions of people. And then from that, leading into discussions about decisions that can be made based on these perceptions. This was critical in COVID. So using data to drive policy making and regulation making, or validating regulation. So we're really concentrating at that angle. And of course, this means building models or building examples of usage of this data. And so want to build an evidence base of the use of artificial intelligence for policy creation and for improving social problems. So these are sort of our key focus areas. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I can imagine what the outcome of that would be if we had that information we're going to collect and then use it in the different sectors in Uganda to make decisions and to drive policy. I can imagine it would be more impactful. Thank you very much. So for you, Joel, as you are aware, Meta Uganda currently is working on something we're calling the UG Hub. And what we're trying to do is create one bus, we like to call it, where we can exchange data between the different MDAs and the different agencies in government. So for example, if I'm at the passport office, I shouldn't have to have my NIN. My NIN should be automatically picked up from NIRA, or if I'm at URA and I'm creating a TIN, I don't need to go to NIRA. So what we're trying to do is create one big bus. And relevant to what you said is at FlyHub, they're trying to do something similar for the APIs. So my question is, one, have you made any considerations for the government transactions in your plans? And then secondly, are the MNOs as well being incorporated in this, because a mobile number is a unique identifier. So I'd like to understand how you're working in collaboration with the mobile networks, as well as the plans you have to incorporate government transactions in your plan for having this big bus as well, where people from the outside can access Uganda, for the financial sector and fintechs can access data to be able to deliver service. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to first tease Ernest, because with all the stuff he's working on, how do we know he's not AI? He could, may have generated this image for us to see, but no, it's really cool stuff that he's doing. In terms of our marketplace, definitely we're trying to see, the way we're looking at it is how we can aggregate demand. So obviously we know the financial sector and the sort of services that are necessary there, but we would want to be able to plug in, for instance, to that hub that you're building, because I don't think there's any place other than government and the MNOs that have more data on what people are doing. So I think with government, really, we are going to make our proposals heard. We're going to say, look, these are the ways in which we think our information could be useful even to you. The ideal might be that the ability also for eventually me as Joel to have almost like a data profile that I own. That way I can see all the different agencies that have information on me. I can see what's outdated, be able to, even update it. Potentially, it could mean that I could also monetize it. So if you're coming, trying to get some information on me, why don't I get some money if Google is going to be selling that money to another advertiser? So I'm a bit radical in terms of I'm trying to see where will we be in 20, 30 years, and what do we need to start building now to get there. With the MNOs, definitely, I think the good thing with the MNOs is now they realize, I've had both MDs of both the top two telecoms say that they are data companies now. They have realized that the fact that they're offering a service that has so many people pulling towards it, they have data and they're already monetizing it in the way in which they are partnering. The company that I used to work with, Jumo, that was creating digital lending, it was off of the data that was coming from MNOs. So definitely they are part of it. It's a question of us figuring out what are they going to get out of our hub that makes sense for them to connect, just like I have to figure out what is going to make sense for you. So I won't lie and say I have all the answers, but by interaction and trying to plan it out, I think we're going to get there. But the one thing I wanted to emphasize, I think, before we close out is that I think even from a government standpoint, when you want to boost the economy, typically it used to be infrastructure spending. They'll be like, let's build roads, let's build bridges, because that puts real money into the hands of people. I think we can do the same thing in terms of the digital infrastructure. If, say, what we're trying to do with e-government is opened up to the point where we are now tapping the young developers that exist and saying, we want to get this thing done, and we can put it forward and say, who is ready to tackle this piece? And you would get, sort of awarded financial compensation if you're able to build something that we end up using. And I think it also helps us get a stake in our country. There's a lot of disillusionment, I think, right now for various reasons. And I think we have the opportunity to start creating that kind of legacy. So part of this API marketplace and part of what I would want to do in terms of the connection we would have with government as well is to provide then the documentation that different developers around the world could say, maybe we can build this for you and solution for you, so that private sector, even government, could come and say, we're struggling with this problem. We are smart people, but maybe there are other smart people out there who could help in doing that. So yeah, that's my thought, and that's where we're trying to push to.
Very, very, very good stuff there. Thank you so much, Angela. I think if there are no further questions from our listeners and watchers, I'd like Anis to give his closing remarks, then I'll close off and we'll call it a good afternoon.
Great. Thanks a lot, Njeri, for inviting me and for this wonderful session. So maybe my last remarks on this is maybe, and this maybe cuts across, I think transformative innovation, the things we are really looking for, digital transformation in the private and government, I think is inherently risky. So there's a lot of risk there. And I think we should not fear to fail. I think we should fail quite a lot and get things moving. So I think this stagnancy or hesitancy to implement things, to jump onto the bandwagon is slowing us down. So I think we need to embrace the technology, embrace the innovation, and jump on the bandwagon and definitely make use of IR now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ernest. Brian Miriam just posted a question about the brilliant ideas and realization of them and research and being in a rush. And what he's asking is what is NITA planning on doing to ensure that research is not rushed? So NITA through ministries and mother agency, the ministry as well, and UICT, as well as work that we do with the different business process outsourcers, with the universities, with different innovation hubs. We try as much as possible to accept these ideas and allow and create an enabling environment for these ideas to be bred, to be grown, to be nurtured until they're fully mature. There's so much innovation that's happening in our country, and we're flooded. And recently, we were at the opening week of awards, and someone from Ministry of Health was sharing how they get so many young developers coming to the ministry with all these ideas. And the question was, how does NITA fit into this? So NITA actually runs not an institution, a fund. We run. Trying to find the right word. We have a leg of NITA that looks at innovation, and what we're trying to do as NITA is try and make that leg of ours a bit more enhanced, so that we can accept, so that we have, I don't want to use the word commercialize, but try and make it more formal on how innovations leave the different developers and come through to us. And if compensation is needed, if someone has done an amazing job, as Joel has said, how do we compensate them? How do we allow this be integrated into the day-to-day government operations? So it is something that NITA is working on, and together with the ministry. And one of the main things that we have to do is create employment, especially in the ICT area. So this is an area that we're working very hard to ensure that we can enhance and further grow. And for research not to be rushed, we have to give it time to grow, and we need to nurture these people that are doing research, and where possible give facilitation, give whatever we need to do so that we get the right ideas out of our population. So yeah, I hope, Brian, that answers your question. Since there are no more questions, I'd like to close up the panel by thanking our panelists, and for all of you that have listened in. We're very, very grateful, and we look forward to the fourth industrial revolution and how we're all going to have our impact in it, and look back 10 years from now, and Ernest, Joel, and I, as well as the rest of you, have a similar session, and we'll be looking back on today and saying, wow, we've come this far. So thank you so very much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you with all the different ideas as we see them crop up. Thank you very much, team.
Great, thanks a lot, bye.